Good afternoon, my friends. It is Tuesday. And hi, welcome. Glad to have you come in and sit for a few minutes and have a little chat. Here we can talk about the things that just don't go racing by. Pause a little bit to contemplate some things. I'm Pastor Lou Kilgore, and I am still currently serving as a pastor here in the High Mountain Presbyterian Church community. This is a diverse community. It's not monolithic at all. There are a variety of people here from different faith traditions. I myself come from, I'm like Heinz 57 varieties of the Christian faith. And I add my own part to it. I'm happy to be here today, glad to be here as a pastor, and grateful for smarter people than me that develop technology for me to be able to talk with you and share this moment. I usually play a little music in the background. It keeps me in the mood to think deep thoughts and to share important things with you. Every day I talk to you because I know you're there, and every day someone, sometimes more than one, takes to the computer and writes me back and answers a question or asks a question or tells me how what I talked about landed. And I'm so happy to hear that and to know that. If you're new to us, if you're new to this setting, welcome. If you've been coming every day, some of you have been, welcome back. And let's look into today. This chair is reserved for you. It reminds me that even though on one level of reality I'm here alone, I'm not alone and neither are you. And so what do you want to talk about today? I have two pair of glasses today. I've been harassed by not being able to find my reading glasses when I need to read. Yesterday, I was uncovering a little more of my love and celebration of practical theology and philosophy. And I talked a little bit about how we see everything subjectively, and I tried to use the illustration of how time, although it's metrical, it's measurable, in our experience of it is not measurable. It's faster sometimes and slower other times. Anyway, so I talked about how we see things subjectively as the subject. We see what we see. And that's not a problem as long as we don't deny it. It's part of the witness of creation in Genesis. We are made of the earth. We're not divine. We don't have omniscience. We don't get to be all-knowing and all-seeing. We're limited. We are limited creatures. We have all of our receptors are on one side of our head. Eyes, ears, nose, breath, all on one side, which leaves a blind side. Blind side. And so I was thinking some more about that after we talked about it. I talked about it yesterday. And I was reminded that there's one more thing we need to be aware of. And it's being tossed around a lot today. I'm sorry for the landscapers that are loud in the background here, and I'm sure that the sensitive mic is picking them up, so I'm trying to compensate by talking a little more loud than I usually do. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is that when you come out of this theoretical, heady, as one person said to me, conversation, and you let it hit the road, you let the rubber of the tire contact the road. So what is it all about? One of the words that people are talking about today is bias. It's one thing to be subjective and to recognize that we see things as we are, not as they are. H.L. Tomlinson in the 1598, I think, said, we see things as we are, not as they are. Oh, this guy's going to compete with me. He's going to try to come right up to the building. So, we see things as we are, along with recognizing that we never really see things clearly. We also add, by who we are, something to what we see. And it's called bias. And it's important, it's really important to not just leave it in the realm of the theoretical, but to think about it in terms of our lives today. Our bias means that even when we see something, and subjective as it is, sometimes there are reasons inside of us that we change what we see. We change what we see. It's called our bias. And today, it comes up a lot in terms of racial bias. That it's very hard for people who have been predominantly around people of one race and one culture to not develop a bias, a control in terms of how you see the world around you. It's not quite an exact fit, but I'm sure you've had this experience. You drive a car, and I don't know, you drive the same car for 4 or 5 years, and then you decide to buy a new car. And this time when you buy a new car, you decide, I'm going to buy a white car. I'm going to buy a white car. Never had a white car, I want to buy a white car. So you buy a white car. And on your way home from the car dealer, you're driving your new white car. You notice, like you never did before, how many white cars there are on the road. You see more white cars. Because you now have a bias to notice white cars. You have something that is going on in your life. You just bought a new white car, and like 3D relief all around you, your bias, your bent, if you will, to notice white cars comes up. It's important. It's important to look for, to discover, and to try to find our biases. Because our biases are not just harmful to when they're about other people. They're not just harmful to other people. They're harmful to us. Because they remove us one more step away from anything close to the truth. I think that what I'm going to say next fits. So, I've been watching with some concern the rise in numbers of the COVID virus again. And well, let me just say this because I want to get it out there. I did not know. I just did not know. I've gone to pretty good schools. I've had good education. I didn't always pay attention in high school. I know. But I've got a pretty good education. I just never really occurred to me in all the conversations about this virus and all the comparisons to the Spanish flu back in 1918. It just never landed in my ears that in 1918 the world was changed inalterably because of the Spanish flu. 1/3 of the world's population died in 1918. 1/3. 1 out of every 3 people died. I had a bias towards news today. I thought big events, I just somehow was missing it. I was unable to hear it, unable to understand it, to see the enormity of it. It came up because I was listening to a theologian friend of mine who was talking about how it was the virus of 1918 that reworked American pastors' theologies about God being in control of the world. It was devastating. And theologians, pastors, and teachers could not just simply get up into the pulpit and do what they had been able to do up until that point, which was to say, don't worry, God is in control. Everything will work out okay. Whole new theologies emerged of a suffering God, of trying to figure out how God is with us in this life, and to come down off the high platforms of control and all the rest of that. There was a bias affecting our theology, and it had to go. It had to go because 1/3 of the population of the world was dying. All right. Now, that's not heady, that's concrete. I was in a meeting yesterday. It was a virtual meeting on Zoom. And I was meeting with some leaders from Patterson. And we were talking about the summer for kids in Patterson. And how the issues, so complex these issues are, of the schools and then camps for kids. And, someone said to me, well, camps for white kids are different than camps for black kids, especially in the inner city, and that's true. And we were talking about our church's participation and other churches' participation in a summer camp that takes place in the United Patterson Church. And one of the women in the meeting, who is a social worker with children, said, it was very important, so important, to figure out how to keep this camp functional in some ways, because, here it is, because she said, I want to just say to you, I don't hear it advertised a lot, but there are so many kids whose mother and father in Patterson have died of the COVID virus. And there's a whole new group of orphan children coming in the aftermath of this virus. I've got a lot of subjects all woven in here together. But starting from yesterday, I'm praying to God to help me to see past my subjectivity, stop making my measure of the world the measure of the world. That's how I see it. Help me to get beyond myself. And then help me with these biases that make me, I guess, unable to see is the kindest version of it. Unable to hear. Ignorant. I'm not inclined to hear and to see the news in a certain way in terms of how it affects people who are not like me. I have my own worries about, the return to church. Is the church going to survive? Not just this church, but church in general. All those things are there. But it comes down to a much more practical prayer today. Lord, the Apostle Paul said, who will rescue me from this broken life, from this broken human being who can only see what I want to see, only hears what I want to hear? Jesus said several times, let those who have who have ears to hear, let them hear. I think Jesus was appealing that we might get beyond our biases and be able to enter into that experience of love for the other person. Love. I don't know what that news I heard about the growing number of children without parents because of COVID virus. And it's not done. It's coming around again. And I'm sure you've heard, they've been talking about this, that, this virus is really having a bigger effect on black and brown community. Again, they live in more dense situations, many of them in urban centers, but the disproportionate level both of infection and then of consequences, terrible consequences leading to death. Just didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know. Do I have my fingers in my ears? Hands over my eyes? Please, Lord. Now more than ever, no matter where we are, help us to come out of ourselves and to see. Hope, hope is not enhanced through denial. Hope is expanded in the full view of the tragedy that is in front of you. That's how hope works. Hope is a mysterious thing. That's why we say it comes from God. Hope isn't something we manufacture by trying to make things better than they are. No, just the opposite. Hope is like that truth that when you see it, it sets your heart free to believe and to hope what you never imagined you would discover. So, Lord, open our eyes to the circumstance of struggle for each other. White, black, brown, Asian, all combinations in between. For the gay and lesbian community that still continues to struggle with biases of other people. They don't stand a chance of anybody seeing them objectively. Police officers. I pray for them today, not because it's just, good to do, and it is, but I pray for them because it's very easy now for them to not be seen, for them to be facing a bias, as much as they may have biases, and then carrying out those biases, having, struggled with certain people over the years, they begin to think all people like that. If they have to, the biases don't serve any of us, but we have them. The more we can name them, the more we can unload them. It's a prayer. It's a prayer. That by God's grace, the Spirit of God might come into this circumstance of our global living. Let the scales fall from our eyes. Give us courage to see what we may not want to see. And then, having seen, to get a new vision of your hope, O God, for the world, for us, and for what we're called to do in caring for one another. Thank you, my friends. I'm glad that you were here today. I want to say to you, just quite frankly, I'm aware that, I can walk, I get up and walk, I can see and I can hear, and so sometimes I use all these metaphors. I don't forget that some of you cannot see who watch this. I don't forget that. I also don't forget that some of you have not been up on your feet to walk for a long time. I don't forget that either. And I'm grateful for you here as a part of this community. You keep me honest. And Just keep coming back. I'll keep meeting you here. It's only Tuesday. So much more for the rest of this day, and so much more ahead of us for the rest of this week. God bless you. Let your prayers be known. Let your prayers be known to God. Send them to me if you want to, too. I'm not God, but I will take your prayers and I'll post them on my wall. I still have my prayer wall. And I pray God's best for you and God's blessing for you. Amen.